Hello, hello. Welcome to the PG-ish podcast. I'm Erin with your parental guidance to help you grow yourself as a parent and raise healthy, happy, and successful humans. Perhaps it's because I have quite some time to think on the school drop-off and pick-up commute, which runs me anywhere from 45 minutes to over an hour. But I think a lot about our education system, from the school system itself to individual classes and how they don't seem truly applicable to nurturing a child into adulthood, to how the school district seems to be in their own silo from the rest of the world. So yeah, I think a lot about our education system. And at least here in California, I kind of think it's not doing our kids any sort of service. And while I don't seem to have a lot of options as a single mom to the school system, I do think that it's time for me to get involved and be a voice rather than just complain about it. So that's my side note that I'm probably going to join some PTO or something. But at any rate, today's talk by Sir Ken Robinson is one that I stumbled on, a few years ago, and it seems he feels the same way. And while this talk is nearly 20 years old, it proves that this isn't a new topic, because despite its age, it's still relevant. He's truly on point when it comes to the unpredictability of our future, not just in 6 months, but 5 or 10 years from now. And it's mind-blowing for me to even think about that in 8 years, my oldest will be college age. Yet I don't know if she'll actually go to college. Because let's be honest, the rapidly changing educational landscape may present other options by then. And just a little side note, this conversation goes hand in hand with what I spoke to Marcus Buckingham about in episode 282. We talked about the uniqueness of our children and how we need to create the space to allow them to authentically be themselves and pursue their loves, not just achieve good grades or make the school look good on test scores. But take a listen to what Sir Ken Robinson says. Here he is.
The second is that it's put us in a place where we have no idea what's going to happen in terms of the future. No idea how this may play out. I have an interest in education. Actually, what I find is everybody has an interest in education. Don't you? I find this very interesting. If you're at a dinner party and you say you work in education, actually, you're not often at dinner parties, frankly. If you work in education, you're not asked, and you're never asked back, curiously. That's I think it strikes me. But if you are, and you say to somebody, they say, what do you do? And you say, you work in education, you can see the blood run from their face. They think, oh my God, why me? It's my one night out all week. But if you ask people about their education, they pin you to the wall. Because it's one of those things that goes deep with people. Am I right? Like religion and money and other things. So I have a big interest in education, and I think we all do. We have a huge vested interest in it, partly because it's education that's meant to take us into this future that we can't grasp. If you think of it, children starting school this year will be retiring in 2065. Nobody has a clue, despite all the expertise that's been on parade for the past 4 days, what the world will look like in 5 years' time. And yet we're meant to be educating them for it. So the unpredictability, I think, is extraordinary. And the third part of this is that we've all agreed, nonetheless, on the really extraordinary capacities that children have, their capacities for innovation. I mean, Serena last night was a marvel, wasn't she? Just seeing what she could do. And she's exceptional, but I think she's not, so to speak, exceptional in the whole of childhood. What you have there is a person of extraordinary dedication who found a talent. And my contention is all kids have tremendous talents, and we squander them pretty ruthlessly. So I want to talk about education, and I want to talk about creativity. My contention is that creativity now is as important in education as literacy, and we should treat it with the same status. Thank you. That was it, by the way. Thank you very much. So, 15 minutes left. Well, I was born... No, I I had a great story recently, I love telling it, of a little girl who was in a drawing lesson. She was 6, and she was at the back drawing, and the teacher said this little girl hardly ever paid attention. And in this drawing lesson, she did. And the teacher was fascinated. She went over to her and she said, "What are you drawing?" And the girl said, "I'm drawing a picture of God." And the teacher said, "But nobody knows what God looks like." And the girl said, "They will in a minute." When my son was 4 in England, actually he was 4 everywhere, to be honest. I mean, if we're being strict about it, wherever he went, he was 4 that year. But he was in the Nativity play. Do you remember the story? No, it was big. It was a big story. Mel Gibson did the sequel. You may have seen it. I don't know. It was Nativity 2. But James got the part of Joseph, which we were thrilled about. We consider this to be one of the lead parts. We had the place crammed full of agents and T-shirts. You know, James Robinson is Joseph. He didn't have to speak, but do you know the bit where the 3 kings come in? They come in bearing gifts, and they bring gold, frankincense, and myrrh. This really happened. We're sitting there, and they, I think, just went out of sequence. Because we talked to the little boy afterwards and said, "You know, are you okay with that?" And they said, "Yeah, why was that wrong?" They just switched. I think that was it. Anyway, the 3 boys came in, little 4-year-olds with tea towels on their heads, and they put these boxes down. The first boy said, "I bring you gold." And the second boy said, "I bring you myrrh." And the third boy said, "Frank sent this." What these things have in common, you see, is that kids will take a chance. You know, if they don't know, they'll have a go. Am I right? They're not frightened of being wrong. Now, I don't mean to say that being wrong is the same thing as being creative. What we do know is, if you're not prepared to be wrong, you will never come up with anything original. If you're not prepared to be wrong. And by the time they get to be adults, most kids have lost that capacity. They have become frightened of being wrong. And we run our companies this, by the way. We stigmatize mistakes. And we're now running national education systems where mistakes are the worst thing you can make. And the result is that we are educating people out of their creative capacities. Picasso once said this. He said that all children are born artists. The problem is to remain an artist as we grow up. I believe this passionately, that we don't grow into creativity, we grow out of it. Or rather, we get educated out of it. So why is this? I lived in Stratford-on-Avon until about 5 years ago. In fact, we moved from Stratford to Los Angeles. So you can imagine what a seamless transition, this was from LA. Actually, we lived in a place called Snitterfield, just outside Stratford, which is where Shakespeare's father was born. Are you struck by a new thought? I was. You don't think of Shakespeare having a father, do you? Do you? Because you don't think of Shakespeare being a child. Do you? Shakespeare being 7. I never thought of it. I mean, he was 7 at some point. He was in somebody's English class, wasn't he? Do you understand? Really? How annoying would that be? Must try harder. Being sent to bed by his dad, to Shakespeare. Go to bed now, to William Shakespeare, and put the pencil down, and stop speaking like that. It's confusing everybody. Anyway, we moved from Stratford to Los Angeles. But something strikes you when you move to America and when you travel around the world. Every education system on earth has the same hierarchy of subjects. Everyone, doesn't matter where you go. You think it would be otherwise, but it isn't. At the top are mathematics and languages, then the humanities, and the bottom are the arts, everywhere on earth. And in pretty much every system, too, there's a hierarchy within the arts. Art and music are normally given a higher status in schools than drama and dance. There isn't an education system on the planet that teaches dance every day to children the way we teach them mathematics. Why? Why not? I think this is rather important. I think maths is very important, but so is dance. Children dance all the time if they're allowed to. We all do. We all have bodies, don't we? Did I miss a meeting? I think... Truthfully, what happens is, as children grow up, we start to educate them progressively from the waist up. And then we focus on their heads and slightly to one side. If you were to visit education as an alien and say, what's it for, public education, I think you'd have to conclude, if you look at the output, who really succeeds by this? Who does everything they should? Who gets all the brownie points? Who are the winners? I think you'd have to conclude the whole purpose of public education throughout the world is to produce university professors. Isn't it? They're the people who come out the top. And I used to be one. So there. But, and I like university professors, but, we shouldn't hold them up as the high watermark of all human achievement. They're just a form of life. Another form of life. But they're rather curious, and I say this out of affection for them. There's something curious about professors. In my experience, not all of them, but typically, they live in their heads. They live up there, and slightly to one side. They're disembodied, in a kind of literal way. They look upon their body as a form of transport for their heads. It's... Don't they? It's a way of getting their head to meetings. Our education system is predicated on the idea of academic ability. And there's a reason. The whole system was invented around the world. There were no public systems of education really before the 19th century. They all came into being to meet the needs of industrialism. So the hierarchy is rooted on two ideas. Number one, that the most useful subjects for work are at the top. So you were probably steered benignly away from things at school when you were a kid, things you liked, on the grounds you would never get a job doing that. Is that right? Don't do music, you're not going to be a musician. Don't do art, you won't be an artist. Benign advice. Now, profoundly mistaken. The whole world is engulfed in a revolution. And the second is academic ability, which has really come to dominate our view of intelligence because the universities designed the system in their image. If you think of it, the whole system of public education around the world is a protracted process of university entrance. And the consequence is that many highly talented, brilliant, creative people think they're not. Because the thing they were good at school wasn't valued or was actually stigmatized. And I think we can't afford to go on that way. In the next 30 years, according to UNESCO, more people worldwide will be graduating through education than since the beginning of history. More people. And it's the combination of all the things we've talked about, technology and its transformational effect on work, and demography and the huge explosion in population. Suddenly, degrees aren't worth anything. Isn't that true? When I was a student, if you had a degree, you had a job. If you didn't have a job, it's because you didn't want one. And I didn't want one, frankly. So, but now, kids with degrees are often heading home to carry on playing video games. Because you need an MA, where the previous job required a BA, and now you need a PhD for the other. It's a process of academic inflation, and it indicates the whole structure of education is shifting beneath our feet. We need to radically rethink our view of intelligence. We know three things about intelligence. One, it's diverse. We think about the world in all the ways that we experience it. We think visually, we think in sound, we think kinesthetically, we think in abstract terms, we think in movement. Secondly, intelligence is dynamic. If you look at the interactions of a human brain, as we heard yesterday from a number of presentations, intelligence is wonderfully interactive. The brain isn't divided into compartments. In fact, creativity, which I define as the process of having original ideas that have value, more often than not, comes about through the interaction of different disciplinary ways of seeing things.
Gosh, I love him. This talk truly reminds me of when I was little, because when I was little, I was always told, you're going to go to college. And the only question about it was where I'd go. Since my grandpa wanted me to go to Stanford, the bar was set really high. Now, I did not end up going to Stanford. Rather, I opted to become a UW Husky instead. But I tell you this little story because that was truly the main focus of my childhood, which was academics. Get the good grades, go to college, get a good job, the end. I had no idea how to prepare or be an adult post-college because no one talked about it. Regardless, our children are so much more than grades and the ability to do well in calculus or AP Econ or whatever. Our children deserve to have more to look forward to other than college, and to have the skills to live a great adult life. Education is important, yes, but perhaps learning investing and communication skills should replace the SATs. I mean, I don't know, just a thought there. But truly, there is so much more to life than school. And I don't know if Mark Twain truly said this, but, Google says he did. And he says, I never let my schooling interfere with my education. And I think that that's so true and beautiful, that there is always something to learn every day outside of a school system. And I don't want to berate the school system terribly, but I feel like it is removing creativity. And when we remove that creativity, when we only focus on regurgitating facts to get good grades on a test, I mean, what is that doing to our child? We've been given, all of us, this beautiful gift of an imagination, and our unique talents and passions should be tapped into. What would happen if we educated the whole child in front of us so that they can face their future with excitement and contribute to society with their whole heart and life? What would happen if we didn't put them in a box to perform or to try to live vicariously through them, which can be seen in the college scandal a few years ago? Regardless, I would love to know what's been on your mind when it comes to your child's education. All right, friend, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Links to the full talk and to his books, You, Your Child, and School, Navigate Your Ways to the Best Education, and Creating a Future for Us All, can be found in the show notes. If you like today's talk, you'll love episode 7, in which Sir Ken Robinson talks about how to explore and encourage your kids' passions, even if they seem totally weird or out of the ordinary. Okay, if you find PG-ish helpful, interesting, or encouraging, please share this episode with your bestie, follow PG-ish on your favorite podcast platform, and share on social so that more parents can learn and grow alongside their kiddo like you. See you next time.